Hello and welcome to Challenge to Build. In today's video, an unboxing video of this right here. This is the Tooliom TL-200M MIG welder. As you can see here to my right, your left, I actually own a Lincoln 210 MP, and this is what I primarily do all of my welding with here in the shop. And something that I've been wanting to do for a while now is buy a budget MIG welder. This welder is a MIG stick and also a lift arc style TIG machine. So it is a multi-process machine as well. However, in this video, I am specifically talking about MIG welding, and even more specifically MIG welding with shielding gas. I do have some flux core wire here that, depending on how this goes, I will swap out and do some flux core welding as well. I do not do a lot of stick welding or flux core welding. I have in the past, but welding with the shielding gas just gives you a much cleaner, more professional weld. So that is primarily what this video is going to be about. Starting with the unboxing portion of the video, and then we will get into the setup and then also the use of the machine. And again, depending on how all this video goes together, will depend on how much we get involved with the different styles of welding. Along with the welder, I bought the Yeswelder Gas Regulator, along with a little bit of 035 flux core wire and a 10-pound spool of 030 solid wire. So when you're using the solid wire, you will need to have the shielding gas. I am using the 75%, 25% mix, which I believe this machine is set up for right out of the box. So with no more chat, we are going to get involved in what this welder actually is. I purchased this welder for under $300, and if you time your purchase, they go on limited time deals periodically. So in comparison, you're looking at over a $2,000 welder over here, and like I said, I paid less than $300 for this welder right here. So the box is now open. The packaging looks pretty good. The first box I pulled out is going to be the accessories. So there should be one MIG gun, the power adapter, the electrode holder for stick welding, the grounding clamp, the gas hose, and then one wire feed roller. So we will open that up in just a second. Out comes the welder. And then obviously first impressions. And first impressions, it actually looks pretty solid. It's very light. Actually, I think I have my scale. I do have a scale. We will weigh it. But you have your gas connection here on the back, on-off switch. Obviously, it's already wired for 220 volt. So we should have the adapter in here. And overall, it feels pretty good. The plastic does look a little cheap, on the cheaper end of side of things. And, you know, it's a budget welder. So you can only expect so much. And first impressions, actually, it looks pretty solid. So I'm gonna set that right there. We're gonna move all this stuff and jump right into the accessory box. Here it is. First up is the 10-foot grounding clamp. Got a decent amount of spring to it. Next up is the gas hose. So they will supply you with the gas hose with the welder. However, you will need to buy the gas regulator, which is why I bought the one from Yeswelder. So this is, I believe, 8 feet. So they give you an 8-foot gas hose. So a lot of room there. Next up is the electrode holder for stick welding. just your basic stick weld electrode holder. Again, you know, it'll work, but the difference in quality, depending on what you spend, obviously you will get better equipment. This feels a little, the spring feels a little, there's some binding going on in the electrode holder, but I mean, there's plenty of clamp there to hold your electrode, so that should be fine. Like I said, this video is specifically targeting MIG welding. We have our adapter. So this will go, this is also a multi-volt unit and should pick up the differences between voltage, so 110 and 220. And in order to switch the voltage, obviously we're going to just use our adapter, which is exactly how this machine works over here. I have the same adapter for this machine, so they work pretty good. And then finally, we have our torch. And the torch setup looks pretty good. Ergonomic, the button, a little sticky, but it's working. Pretty basic setup, small torch, and again, it's got the 10-foot lead. And it's, I believe this is what they consider to be the Euro style connection. So we will get involved in hooking the machine up in a minute. And then along with that, we have the manufacturer's user manual. And, oh, this is kind of nice. And then we have the welding setting chart. And again, flow rates, wire diameter, welding current. They give you the layout for lift, TIG, torch consumables, which is good. The front panel, wire installation, and then all your parameters for the different applications for welding. And then your user manual, which you are going to want to kind of page through this to see what they recommend as far as setup and how to use it, which I am going to do throughout this video because I've never messed with one of these before. Obviously, I have the basic knowledge of them, but it's always good to familiarize yourself with whatever equipment you are buying and or using. So let's get this out of here. And then they also give you the secondary wire roller for different wire configurations. So overall, they definitely give you everything that you need to kind of get started. Again, if this is ready to go for fluxed core welding wire, stick welding, right out of the box. If you want to get involved with solid core wire, you will need to go ahead and purchase a regulator, which is right here. And then this should not need any Teflon because this is tapered. So this goes on here. And then this will seat in the taper. I'll get an adjustable wrench and I'll snug all this up once we get it hooked up to the welder. But then there we go with the regulator and the hose assembly. So that's pretty painless. Extra parts. And what I'm going to do now is I have a spare welding cart. I'm going to bring the welding cart over and get this all set up, go through some of the hookups, and then turn it on and see exactly how it works. So let's go. All right, so before I go any farther, I'm going to go ahead and throw this on the scale. I have it sitting right here in front of me. And the weight for the machine comes just under 21 pounds. We are sitting at 20 pounds, 15 ounces. So really not all that heavy. And to continue along in the setup of the unit, I did go ahead and page through the user manual, and I'm going to set this up for DCEP, which is DC current, electrode positive. And in order to do that, you take this plug here, insert it into the red receptacle. For the initial setup, I am going to run this machine on 110 volt, and once we get involved into the welding aspect of it, I'm going to plug it into my generator. A lot of people are always curious about whether or not you can weld off of a generator, so that is what I'm going to do. I have a Westinghouse W-Gen 9500, so for the welding, I will weld on 220 volt from my generator. So that is now plugged in. The next thing to do is take the torch lead. It has a cap on it that you have to unscrew. This is what they consider to be the Euro style connection. Take off the plastic cap on the front of the welder. And then it can only really go in one way. Fight with the hose here a minute. Two prongs. And the welding cart handle can kind of get in the way. This is just the budget single welding cart from Harbor Freight. Seems to work out pretty good. You can see on this one over here, I had to lower the handle just by taking out the screws, so it can be modified relatively easy. And make sure we are in solid. All right, now with that, that's ready to rock and roll. The grounding clamp will go to the black plug receptacle here. A couple more things. We are going to put the gas valve on right here on the back of the machine. You're going to want to have a pair of wire cutters maybe and a couple adjustable wrenches for putting this thing together. I already went ahead and tightened up the fittings on the regulator. And the last thing we need to do is put the wire in. So we are going to go for the first initial startup here. Flip the switch on the back. You can hear the fan running. It is a tad loud, but at least you can hear it running, moving some air. And on the machine, we have a couple different buttons along with dials. This is the selector button for the process in which we are going to weld. So we have 100% CO2. We have flux core welding 035. We have argon 80%, CO 20%. So that is the mixed shielding gas, which is what I have. I have a 75-25% mix, so we'll just use the 80-20 setup here on the machine. Then we have the lift TIG setup along with the stick welding. And over here, the second selector button is going to be your inductance. You have the ability to tune it in from +10 all the way down to -10, along with your 2T and 4T options. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, basically it's how many times you touch the trigger on the torch. So in the 2T function, it is basically like your standard welding torch. You push and hold, you run your weld, and then you let off, and then it shuts the machine down as far as welding. Your 4T option is you pull the trigger, you let go, then you have the ability to weld if you're on longer welds. Push the trigger again and let it go, and then that will stop the welding process. So 2T and 4T options. You have your voltage set here, along with your wire speed over here. Lastly, as far as the setup what we have to do is install the wire. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine off for a second. Okay, there's about a 5 to 10 second delay between the switch turning off and the machine turning off. For the welding on this video, I am going to be using solid 030 wire. This is ER70S-6. It's pretty basic setup in here. There's really not that much going on. There is a 10-pound spool adapter already on the machine, and it has the locking nut to hold it on there. That is reverse threads, just so you are aware. This machine feeds from the bottom. So when you are installing the spool, you want it to feed from the bottom of the spool. And then you want to just connect it with a pin, like so. Reverse threads. You want to tighten this up. And then you also want to set the adjustment on the spring here in the center wing nut. So this way here that the spool does not unwind faster than you want. Because if it does, you will have a mess and be kicking and screaming the whole time that you clean it up. So first step is putting the spool on. Second step is feeding the wire through the initial feed. There we go. Once you get that done, you bring the feed roller down on top and go ahead and snug it up. Okay. Once we get that done, the next thing you want to do is take your torch, pull your nozzle off the torch, take out your tip. We're going to turn the machine back on. And you always want to feed your wire through without the gas on. Obviously the tank isn't hooked up, but if it was, you would want to make sure that your valve on the tank is off. We're also going to lower the wire speed for the initial run-in. And here we go. Pull the trigger. And then once you get it moving, then you can slowly crank up on the wire speed. You can see it feeding the wire through the spool or from the spool. And then all we have to do is just wait for the wire to show up at this end. And there it is. Reinsert the tip, followed by the nozzle. Now we should be ready to weld. And what I'm going to do is get some metal set up, get my generator fired up, and strike an arc and just see how well a budget welder in comparison to, say, a Lincoln does some welding. So let's challenge the build. All right, so I have a little bit of variation of sheet metal in front of me. I have a little bit of 16 gauge that I'm going to try to do like a butt joint weld to, kind of simulating a little bit of sheet metal. I have a little bit of 1/8 inch here that I'm going to just kind of do something like that and weld on both sides. And I also have 3/16, which is about the limit of this machine. Obviously, this machine will be able to weld, or should be able to weld, thicker material. But in order to do so, that is going to determine on metal prep. So if you're unfamiliar with how to prep material for thicker applications, make sure you do your due diligence on that. So I have my generator running. To keep the theme of budget equipment, I have a Deko, what model is this? I don't even remember what model this is. This is the budget Deko auto darkening welding helmet with the 2 sensors. So you can get this helmet for under $50. I generally use Yeswelder. This helmet right here is the LYG 800H, just in the stars and stripes pattern. Still a budget helmet, but you're looking at under $100 opposed to under $50. So I am going to use this helmet. And as far as my gloves, general safety equipment, just Tillman, I use TIG welding gloves. They're a little bit thinner. That's all just personal preference. So the generator is running. I have my hose hooked up. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the shielding gas. And we will have to set the flow rate on the gas valve. We're going to go ahead and hook up the ground clamp to the fab table. This is a clutch fab table, mobile welding fab table, jig table. This thing is pretty sweet as well, pretty versatile. And grab the MIG gun, work out the twists, and we should be ready to rock and roll. And here we go. Now the machine did register that we are running 220 volts opposed to when we initially did the startup at 110 volts. We have it set for the 80-20 mix running 030 wire. We're going to keep the voltage at normal. So the one con so far out of this whole entire video, the first con that I've come up with is the voltage adjustment. This machine will automatically adjust for how much voltage you need, and then they will give you the adjustment of plus or minus 1.5 volts in either direction. So I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that in relating to setting it up with material thickness, but we're going to go for it. I'm going to run down the wire speed to about 150, I guess, because, I mean, I could, let's see. You know, this is why we read stuff, right? So MIG, 80-20, 16 gauge, 13-12, which is about 1/8 inch, 8 gauge. They are saying 200. I generally like to stay on the lower end of things. So we're going to go with 170 for the speed. And we are going to go for running some 1/8 inch, I guess. And in that case, I guess I should, I don't know what I'm doing. 12 gauge, 200. We'll come up to 180 and see where that is. All right, so we're on. We got the ground, we got gloves, and here we go for the first weld with the Tooliom 200M. And that's actually really impressive. We're going to go for another tack on this back side. It was more than a tack, but you get the idea. And I promise you, I have not welded with this machine ever. That was the first and second time that I ever welded with it, and I can see that it's not bad. It's actually really, really impressive. I will give you a close-up right now. With that second weld, I can see that I need to lower my wire speed just a little bit, and I also need to tune in my welding helmet here. So we're going to lower this. Should have went with my original gut feeling. Go 165. And here we go again. Still want to slow it down. I'm also going to try to adjust the voltage up a little bit. It doesn't give me any indication of where my voltage is at in relation to the automatic setup, but I can see that it needs some adjustment. We're going to slow it down some more and try again. We're getting better. I mean, regardless of how I'm doing with the welding, I mean, that is really, really impressive. For a welder that's under $300 right out of the box, simply just basically plugging and playing. The only advantage I have is having the shielding gas, which I forgot to set. You were supposed to remind me about that. Let's check my flow rate real quick. And in order to do that, I'm going to lower my speed. Which my flow rate was way, way high, which is probably why they look so good. Not that that hurts, but you will burn through a bottle pretty quick. I'm running about 15 to 20 cubic feet an hour. So now we're gonna go back to doing this. Let's see here, we're gonna run it. Again, I'm welding 1/8 inch material. I'm gonna set my wire speed to about 150. I'm using the 2T option. And here we go again. Really impressive. Really, really impressive. Now the question is, how will it work on 16 gauge? We're gonna kind of represent like a butt weld. We're gonna lower this to normal, and we are going to come down to 90. Just winging it here. And we are gonna do a spot weld. So we gotta come way down. And then we also can change the inductance. Inductance, the higher the inductance, generally the thicker material, the lower the inductance, the thinner material. So I'm gonna drop this down to a -5. And I raise my settings. Now I'm running a wire speed of 50. Not liking that at all. Back up here, and we'll bring the inductance up +5. See what that does. So at this point, it's just going to be a matter of learning the machine to produce the welds in which we are trying to do. You can see on the back of the 16 gauge, the heat signature pattern. The welds are okay. They're a little cold, too much wire, but it is welding. Just don't know how I like the option of not having full control of the voltage. I need more heat. But we're getting there. So that was some 16 gauge. Now we're going to go to doing some 3/16. So they say for 16 gauge. So they're saying to do 118. So they're saying to come way up. Let's try their way, right? 110 before we jump into 3/16. Let's bring up the wire speed real quick and try it their way, right? Let's try again. Yeah, their way works a lot better. That's much better. So my guess, oh yeah, look at the penetration on the backside. Real good penetration on that one. So my guess is with how the machine calibrates the voltage is all determined upon the wire speed, because that made a big difference. This is why we read the user manual and some of the documentation that comes with the equipment that we use, right? No shame in reading. That did the trick. Cool deal. All right, now we're gonna jump over to the heavy stuff. And again, cheat sheet. 200, says 8 gauge. We're a little heavier than that. It says 200, but we're gonna jump on the lower end of things. We're high. The inductance, we're gonna come up to 10, 2T, we're good there. And we're gonna run a standard T-joint. Try it their way. I will be dead straight honest. I am really impressed with how well this is welding. Amazing. Comparative in price, under 300 to right around 2,000. If you are looking for a beginner welder, the Tooliom 200, the 200M is a great choice, I think. So in conclusion, I'm really impressed with how well the Tooliom TL-200M does with MIG welding with the gas. That is the extent of the welding that we are going to do in this video, just because of the length of this video. The machine has capabilities in other processes, obviously lift arc TIG, stick welding, and flux cord MIG welding. When you are doing the flux cord MIG welding, you are going to want to make sure you follow the specifications from the manufacturer. You are also going to want to run DC electrode negative for flux core welding, and they lay it out again in the user manual. As far as some quick specifications on this machine, one downside to lower quality equipment is going to be in efficiency. This machine uses a ton of power in comparison to, say, my Lincoln machine over here. The duty cycle is right around 60% at max output. Obviously, when lowering the voltage and the amperage down, you will increase the duty cycle. But just as far as a quick little rundown, this machine uses a max input of 42 amps at 110 volts. When you use it on 220 volt, the amperage goes down to 30 amps. So very capable machine. You will need to use heavy gauge wire for this unit, along with the proper breaker size to get the full capacity out of this machine. So other than that, honestly, very impressed with the overall MIG welding capability. If you are looking for your first welder, you know, I would recommend the Tooliom TL-200M. Obviously, in vast comparison between the two, again, upwards of $2,000, and I paid less than $300 for this. So if you don't have any experience welding and you are looking to get into it at a really budget-friendly price, this is, I think, a great option. Considering that I've been welding with this machine for probably 10 years or a little less than 10 years, it is something that I've wanted to do for quite a while, is just buy a budget machine, plug it in, and just see what it did in comparison. And I'm very impressed, and I definitely think it is a very capable machine. So with that, it's time for you to get out there and go challenge your build, buy yourself a welder, and go build something cool. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in an upcoming video and/or review.